a gun to your head to intimidate and pressure you into signing something against your will, or otherwise wouldn't have done, that's coercion. That's illegal. A direct single act to force or threaten you to comply. But coercive control, or psychological murder in slow motion, aimed to deprive you of your freedom, limit your ability to act and control your life, involving a combination of isolation, threats, financial abuse, and emotional manipulation, that is legal. Crazy, right? Well, that is just the beginning of this judicial madness. Over 43 million women and 38 million men have experienced narcissistic abuse at the hand of an intimate partner, just within the US alone, and does not even account for the hundreds of millions of others across the globe who too have survived it from their intimate partner, a family member, a friend, or even a coworker. And at the center of narcissistic abuse, its foundational core is coercive control, their invisible weapon that hijacks your mind, not just your life, through fear, confusion, and manipulation. But it is not considered a crime. Not in your country, not in mine, not in most jurisdictions around the world. In fact, it is 10 times easier to carry a gun without a permit than it is to find protection for you or your child from being psychologically tortured. This is not only very real, but it is very dangerous. Jennifer, killed by her husband after years of legal inaction. She documented his emotional abuse, stalking, and coercive behavior. Despite this long history of controlling, the courts granted him visitation and downplayed the risk. Jennifer was murdered in front of her children in 2007. The system failed to recognize psychological violence as lethal. A multi-year inquiry into Australia's family court system revealed that judges regularly ignored psychological abuse. Children were forced into contact with their abusive parents. Despite expert testimonies and evidence, survivors were silenced, blamed, and re-traumatized by the legal process. You don't stay because you enjoy suffering the unspeakable. You don't deserve to carry the weight of a fear that no person, let alone a child, should ever shoulder, or be chained down with guilt and feeling responsible to keep peace in a war zone. Because, well, let's be blunt, if a stranger imprisoned you, isolated you from support, told you were crazy, and made you sign over your rights, call it hostage taking. But if a spouse, parent, or partner does it, we call it a relationship problem. Coercive control is not just a matter of deliberate cruelty and intimidation to do one thing. It is psychological captivity, targeting your identity, your perception of reality, your ability to make choices, your ability to trust yourself. Instead of holding a gun to your head, your psyche gets tattooed with the thoughts that if I leave, something bad will happen. Or maybe I'm the problem. I'm not enough. It's also why you sign things, say things, agree to things, because it legitimately feels like the only choice. Because narcissist's goal is not to just control your behavior. It is to own your perception of reality. It is to silence your voice, restrict your freedom, and your rights as a human. They systemically break you down so that you become dependent on their version of the truth. And why so many victims stay longer, apologize for being mistreated. They defend their abuser, sign away custody, property, or legal rights. That is not compliance. It is compliance under duress, which in any other context would be illegal. And why legal systems that fail to recognize this as an issue is not just neglecting their basic duty, but is a matter of willful ignorance. Because let's be real, in today's connected world, this information is widespread, easily accessible, and actively discussed across platforms, research, and policy circles. And the science is clear that the invisible scars and wounds that narcissists deliberately inflict cut so deep and make such a severe impact, it devastates all aspects of your life and areas of your health. Neurologically impairs brain functions, shrinks the hippocampus, our memory and learning center, overstimulates the amygdala, fear response, disrupts the prefrontal cortex, our judgment and decision-making take place. Psychologically, it leads to CPTSD, disassociation, emotional dysregulation, attachment injuries that affect every future relationship you'll have. Physiologically, the chronic stress and cortisol damage your immune system, heart, hormones, digestive system, and are 5 times more likely to commit suicide than those in physically or sexually abusive relationships. Now let's talk about the children who endure this abuse. These children suffer as much or more because narcissistic parents don't just miss the empathy bus, they torch it. And then they blame the child for not catching a ride. Instead of safety, connection, and love, you get chaos, confusion, manipulation, and a masterclass at how to walk on eggshells and smile while you say I'm fine when you're anything but before you enter kindergarten. These children's epistemic trust, or their internal radar for who can I believe or how can I make sense of this world, gets so scrambled that they're basically flying blind. They don't just mistrust people, they mistrust their own mind. The result? Insecure attachments, emotional dysfunction, chronic anxiety, panic attacks, just even trying to go to school, hormonal breakdowns, social isolation, inability to form or sustain relationships, shortened life expectancy. Then these kids grow up and become adults who question everything about themselves. Am I too much? Am I not enough? Why do I feel broken when nothing looks wrong? This is called pre-mentalizing mode. Your brain basically adapts to a world of chaos. It's always waiting for the next plot twist. But now, on the other hand, if you're waiting for legal protection or justice from this, you're going to want to go ahead and pack yourself a snack and a bottle of H2O because it's going to be a while. As globally, the odds of getting any real recognition in court for narcissistic abuse and coercive control are about the same as winning the lottery. And that's if the lottery was rigged and the jackpot for winning was receiving a handwritten, empty apology note from the person who deliberately did this to you. As statistics show that less than 1% of victims receive any form of justice whatsoever. These fuckers skip off into the sunset scot-free to continue their psychological destruction on the next unknowing participant. So why exactly is it that these laws are not just drastically lagging behind the sciences, but furthermore are actively being rejected, declined, and refused to enforce? Well, they claim that it's just too hard to prove, and they don't have available resources, and judges claim that they don't know enough to act. But how can the legal system still say it doesn't understand emotional abuse when the research is everywhere? The neuroscience is clear, and the toolkits already exist. The American Bar Association has a coercive control toolkit for judges and attorneys. The UK College of Policing has official guidelines for identifying coercive patterns. There are bench books, training webinars, legal checklists, and risk assessment tools. Judges and lawyers have access to all of it. They say it's too complicated. It's too subjective. These could potentially lead to weaponizing coercive control claims in custody disputes, or possibly harming or falsely accusing the wrong party and parent. Well, newsflash, that's already happening. And let's be honest here, most abuse, including physical and sexual, isn't easy to prove, but that doesn't justify an action. But beyond this, all factuality goes against their judicial oath to administer justice impartially, as it's one thing to prioritize physical safety, but it's a total nother thing to go out of your way to blatantly ignore or dismiss evidence of psychological abuse and what science and research have shown and proven unequivocally. So for the lawyers who tell their clients to stay silent because judges don't want to hear it, and for the judges who dismiss the mere mention of this, overlook blatant evidence presented in court, or feel that trying to learn it is a waste of your time, please remember what seems like a waste of a couple hours of your day ultimately cost someone else their whole life. And if every other form of abuse, assault, manslaughter, and murder, whether premeditated, voluntary, or the result of one reckless driving incident that kills on impact, is illegal, then why is a deliberate decay and destruction of someone's life, mind, sanity, and their rights as a human not? Because in all realness, that is not just appalling and injustifiable, but it is an embarrassment to the modern judiciary system in its entirety. Because when you've already been gaslit, degraded, broken down, being ignored by the system isn't just invalidating, it is re-traumatizing. It is like a kick in the kidneys when you're already down on your knees. Saying, we still trust the abuser more than we trust you. Let's be clear about what that does. It tells survivors that your pain doesn't matter, your trauma isn't real enough, your sanity is still up for debate. It tells abusers, charm works, gaslighting wins. The courtroom is just another tool to use to control. Here's your gold star for creativity. We have therapists, neurologists, trauma specialists write reports with phrases like chronic psychological injury, malignant narcissism, evidence of complex trauma consistent with coercive control. When the court chooses to ignore experts' evidence, healthcare records, and survivor testimonies, it is not being cautious. It is actively harming the person already bleeding from the inside out. And when you say you need more proof, you're not asking for proof, you're asking for blood. And by the time you see it, it may be too late. And that is not justice. That is betrayal. And, well, no one forgets that kind of betrayal. Not an adult, not a child. They say that justice is blind, but blindness and willful ignorance are not the same. Refusal to acknowledge the mental injuries documented by professionals. Refusal to listen when survivors say something is deeply wrong here. Justice may be blind, but it must not, too, be deaf and indifferent. Because when the system overlooks coercive control, when it downplays emotional abuse, and when it doubts trauma because it doesn't bruise, it's no longer blind to bias, it's blind to truth. And when that happens, justice is not impartial, it is complicit. And perhaps it's time that we open our eyes and maybe some justice can be served. Focus on you. Fuck the narcissist, or whatever you want to call them.